It's the best day of the week, in my opinion, Slasher Sunday. And we get to talk about one of the best horror movies in recent memory. Definitely one of the top 10 in the decade. Maniac with Elijah Wood. This movie blew me away when I saw it. Now, Elijah Wood is somebody, I mean, of course I'm a Lord of the Rings fanatic, so I love him from that. But this guy is a true blue horror fanatic, for real. And, you know, he could have done whatever the hell he wanted after Rings. And what he decided to go do with his time is to open up a horror production company. And he produces all sorts of horror. And he has this goal to try to get a horror movie to win an Academy Award and get back to the Academy Awards. Like, he takes it very seriously. He has such a passion for it. And I just, in addition to me already loving the dude, that propels him over the top. So I'm going to stop fucking sucking Elijah Wood's dick right now and get to the review. But I just love the dude. Honestly, I think he's just fantastic. And he's fantastic in this movie. And when I saw this movie the first time, when it first came out, I went into it like, okay, this is a remake of the 1980 movie that a lot of people, has a huge cult following, which I'm a fan of the movie. I really enjoy it. I don't love it like everyone that, is into that movie does, but I think it's really cool. It's a good movie for sure. But I went into this one kind of like, and I don't remember if I knew Elijah's love for horror yet all that much at this point, but maybe this is what sold me on him being a horror guy, and I was like, oh shit, like holy, and then I saw interviews with him and I was like, oh wow, he really is into this, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I put this on and it just blew my mind. The music, the gore, the freaking tension, the atmosphere, the camera work, the risk-taking with the idea behind the film at all being in complete POV of the killer. Because that's just it. I mean, slasher movies, especially like John Carpenter's Halloween, I think is the movie that popularized the POV cam in horror, especially in America, should I say. This movie takes that trope and it actually uses it to its strength and makes the entire film in the POV. Because anytime we get POV in a slasher movie, it's from the killer's perspective. And this movie is all in the killer's perspective. So we get to see everything happening through his eyes. And what that, not only is that unique and one of the only movies to actually do that, especially with the killer, but we get to see the world through his eyes. We don't just get to see the kills through his eyes. We get to see how he perceives the world. When he goes out on this first date with this girl, Lucy, he starts looking out and everyone's staring at him. And then he looks back at her and her face is bleeding. And we see like his vision is starting to kind of collapse and cloud on him. He is just losing it. And we get to see that. We get to see in his mind. We get to see what he sees. And we just don't usually get something like that in these kinds of movies. Like Jason or Freddy or any of these guys. Like, we don't get to see through their eyes, see how they envision the world, how they see things. And that gives such a unique spin on this movie. And why I think I love this movie even more. Because there's pretty much everything I have a lot to talk about here, so strap on in, because I'm going to be talking about this movie for a while. And when he's following this girl in the opening, and he's like, don't worry, I know where you live, and his voice is all creepy, and then he looks up in that rear view mirror, and the music cues. The ability to set the atmosphere, the tone, so fast. I mean, it is set within seconds. It's masterful. And it retains throughout the entire picture. It never lets up. There's no humor. There's no lightness. There's no nothing. This movie is pure fucking grimy, gritty, fucking like scary atmosphere the entire film. It's astonishing, truly. But I love that opening shot of him stalking his victim and then looking up in the rear view and just those psychotic eyes, and then just, then he goes and he finds the girl and he stabs her up through the mouth, and we see the knife through her mouth, and then he takes the knife out and he slices her scalp off, and she falls out of frame and he's holding the scalp up, and we just see Maniac across, and the music is pumping, and the music is incredible. It's unique, but also kind of an 80s throwback as well. I seriously can't say enough good about this movie. So I hate to just be sitting here being like, oh my God, it's the best and it's great, but it's true. So I can't help but get all gushy about it. And of course, him being a psycho, he has to be driving a van. I think what is sad about a movie like this is that, take that kill I was just talking about, for instance, where he slices the girl's head off, her scalp off, and she falls out of frame, and Maniac, and we see the eyes in the mirror, and just the POV cam work, and how Elijah Wood's coming in and out of the frames. And this movie is very artistic, but it's not going to get that credit from majority of people. So you could make a movie like this without the horror and the gore and all this, and it would be respected as an art film, because it is very artistic. It's super well done. But because it's a movie like this, no one would give it a chance. And I understand, because they have an aversion and are disgusted by the subject matter and material within. But it still doesn't make it any less of a shame to me that this film would not get the recognition it deserves for being an actual art piece in my mind. It is a beautiful film, and it's dark as fuck, and it's great. I'm not saying it isn't, but the way it's done for me is masterful. And yeah, I don't know. When I was watching it, I was getting kind of bummed. Like, no one I know would watch this, and it's so well made. So anyway, and he's picking up a girl on the internet, and we get to see how calculated he is. That he knows how to be charming. He knows how to be sweet and innocent. He knows what pictures to send so that he doesn't look creepy. He picks the one of him smiling over the one of him kind of just, having more of a straight face, so that she can see that he has some light in him, that he's trustworthy, that he's bright, and that he's playful. Like, he calculatingly picks the right photograph to send, and he sets up the right words. He's very aware of his actions, and he plays off of his strengths. He knows what he is, and what he can do with it. And it just adds to the psychotic nature of this guy. And now, what are the things that I always say about a slasher film that they pretty much always need to have in order to be awesome? Awesome kills with gore and hot chicks showing nudity, tits and gore. This movie has it in spades. The girls are gorgeous. We get a lot of nudity. We get unbelievably realistic gore in this movie. Holy shit, is it real? The scalpings, when he's getting ripped apart at the end, it's so real, it's scary. Like, this is where you start to get into that place where you're like, how are they doing this? How the fuck? And when he gets his face ripped apart at the end of the movie, unbelievable shot. So good. So the gore is top notch. The girls are gorgeous. The nudity is amazing. Oh my god. Between freaking, the main girl here, Anna, and Lucy. Jesus, both those girls. especially Lucy's my type for sure. And how could you, like, this is what makes him a maniac. The fact that he could strangle Lucy on that first date when she's trying to seduce him and is, you know, going down on him and everything. You're like, why? He's a psychopath, but it's like, no, not. There's a later in the movie he meets, you know, the main chick's boyfriend, and he's a total dickhead. That guy gets to live, but Lucy, the why? Not her. Jesus. Anyway. I know I talk about that a lot, but it's just like, no. And we see that he's taking medication, and I don't know if this is an attempt to dull out the voices and the sensations and the visions and whatever, or is this an attempt for him to stop? Because there is a place where you're starting to wonder if he is responsible for his actions. Like, is something taking over him and making him kill? Because he goes into kind of a Norman Bates mode, like, look what happened, look what you did, look what... And then he also goes into, like, look what you made me do. So it kind of goes back and forth. And I feel like every time that it pans away from him and we see him killing, because the camera's in POV the whole time, except for some of the times when he's killing, it pans away from him and shows him killing. And it's almost as if they're suggesting that we're seeing how he's leaving his body and watching the murders take place as a spectator, as opposed to the one actually committing the murders. So I'm curious on if that is to try to convey to the audience that he's not actually committing these murders, whatever is inside of him is, and he's watching it. And then when he comes back, it's like, what have you made me do? Like, this is, like, when he says, what have you made me do? It's like, that's his body doing it. So it's him, but he has no control over those actions. And I feel like that's what we're seeing when it pans away. That's just my interpretation of why it pans away. But yeah, I was just really noticing it this time and trying to pay really close attention to it. And that's what I gathered from that. Which kind of makes it sad in a way. I mean, obviously I don't condone the actions, and yes, I'd kill the guy. But it makes it pretty sad. I mean, his mom had sex in front of him and let him watch and did drugs and fucked guys on the street corner. Like, what kind of a guy fucks a girl, like a woman, in front of her kid and has, like, no qualms about it? That's insane, dude. That's the maniac. His mom's the maniac. Like, yes, he becomes a maniac as well, but obviously through, you know, other people's actions. Love that we get to see Goodbye Horses in here from Silence of the Lambs. I feel like that's a song that is so so connected to one movie that you don't want to use it in any other film seriously, especially a horror film like this, because it almost is like instantly people are like, well, they're just ripping this off. Because, like, you can use it in, like, a, you know, in a parody, you know, like in Joe Dirt or whatever. He's like, he puts the lotion on the skin, that whole thing. He's gonna make you into a Joe Dirt trench coat. Yeah, that's gross, man. Like, those usually work, but this is and that's what I really love about this movie. It takes so many risks. Doing this whole thing in point of view is a risk, because this is a remake, and the original wasn't in point of view. So to take something like that, you are automatically setting yourself up for failure with a ton of people that loved the original, but they don't concern themselves with that. They made the film they wanted to make. And the callback to Silence of the Lambs here, it didn't try to ape it, but it's a slight homage and works very well to the scene. And seriously, how hot is Lucy in that fucking scene? Jesus, she's wonderful. I'm just going to keep going on about her. No, I'm not, because I'm going to move on. But God, the scalpings in this when he's cut. Woo! That shit's so real. And as I said, like, he doesn't seem to be into it. Like, he goes, after he kills Lucy, he goes in the bathroom and vomits. Like, he's disgusted with himself. And when he comes back, and we also get to see the world through his eyes, through how he perceives when he brings the scalps back, puts them on the mannequins, and the mannequins come back to life. Like, in his mind, He has taken them. He hasn't killed them. He's taken them home with him to introduce to his girlfriend. And we also see that he positions them in freaking sexual acts, like performing sexual acts on each other. Like he walks in and one of them's like going down on the other one. They're like committing lewd acts that he set up. So, and then he sees himself with a Barbie doll crotch, like a mannequin crotch, like friggin' Hedwig and the Angry Inch here, 6 inches forward and 5 inches back. So he must be sexually repressed. His mom had sex in front of him, and we see that, you know, Lucy's trying to give him a blowjob, and he is just not having it. He goes to strangle her. He sees himself as inadequate, that he has no genitalia. He's making them perform sex on themselves instead of doing it to them. So he has all these sexual hang-ups in the movie, which speaks to most maniacs with mother issues. I have mother issues, but I took it in the opposite direction. And then we're introduced to Anna, who is just wonderful as well. Beautiful, beautiful woman. And she's kind of the light of the movie. If there's any, she is it. And she's the only like salvation for this guy. And he's trying so hard to exist within, because any other woman he encounters in this movie, he kills almost instantly. And with her, he's actually trying to fall in love with her. He's trying to show his emotional sides, his softer sides. He's trying to appeal to her and connect with her. And when she rejects him is when he loses it and decides to try to take her as a trophy so that he can take her home and marry her. And this is the one he ends up at the end, putting the ring on the finger, putting her in bed. He sees her as a bride. She turns on him, but this is her. This is it. This is the one he's been looking for throughout the movie. And then when we see his hands, especially when he's first with Lucy and he's putting his hands up, and then we see it with Anna as well, and the girl whose Achilles tendon he cuts. Whoo, man, that one's fucking gnarly, and her ankle breaks right after. And then he goes and he scalps her, and he looks in the reflection of the car, and we get the homage to the original 1980s Maniac poster. You know, I warned you not to go out tonight, and he's holding the scalp, and it's hanging down, and he's got the knife, and we don't see the head. Such a great shot. That is, seriously, that's how you do an homage. That is how you do an homage right there. That is arguably the greatest homage I've ever seen in a fucking movie, like for a horror movie, to its predecessor. That was incredible. What an incredible thought. And we also get later in the movie, he says, you know, I told you not to go out tonight. I told you not to go out tonight, which is yet another homage to the poster that said, I warned you not to go out tonight. So yeah, I love the homages here because they're subtle. I don't know if they're subtle, but they're truly just for us. But they're also very artistic. They're not shoehorned in. Like, they work so well in the moment. So, yeah. As I said, there's not one thing I'm going to say bad about this movie. Not one damn thing. And then when we get to see him stalking his next victim, he's driving around in his van and he's going up and down the streets and he's out in the broad daylight. And that's just so fucking scary to think about. Like, just thinking, like, whoever catches his eye, like, he's looking and it could be anybody. We see all these different women and he fixates on a couple of them for like a moment. And then he passes on them. What draws him to these people? I don't know. Like, I was trying to kind of figure it out throughout the movie. Like, what is it? What does he gravitate towards? What is his MO? And I wasn't really seeing one. But, you know, obviously they're beautiful women. That's one. Except for the older lady. But she seems to insult him, and he doesn't like that. So he goes and takes it out on her. But yeah, I was trying to figure out what the MO was, but I didn't really see one. But just to think there's some guy driving around the city and he's looking at all these different women, and one of them is going to catch his attention enough for him to, you know, make them his next project, his next murder, is just horrifying. I mean, you can't think about that stuff in reality. It will consume you, and it'll cut down on your quality of life. But when you're watching this movie, it fucks with your head. Like, yeah, it's scary. I find it funny that when he meets this Martin guy that's over at Anna's house, Martin tells him that he's gonna be in a toothpaste commercial or whatever, and he's like ding, he's like, you know, look at my teeth. And then when he comes back in the house, he puts a meat cleaver through his mouth. Like, that's his moneymaker. That's where he has his pride, that's where he attacks, is his mouth. So I don't know if that was on purpose. I'm sure it was, but I just noticed it on this watch, and it was like, oh yeah, that's fucked up. And like when Anna runs off and she gets in the car and they run him over, he flips over the hood, he looks back as he's like on the ground, and like the car swerves and crashes, and she just flies out the window. That was such a great shot. And then goes over and he scalps her, takes her home. And he has her, and he sees her as his bride. And then before, when we see the women that he has at his house, they are in completely, you know, normal mode. I mean, he even goes to the lengths of putting like a nose ring in the mannequin so it looks like Lucy. But he sees them in their natural, normal state. And when they turn on him, he sees them scalped. It's like his demons are finally coming back to kill him, to get their revenge. So he sees them as the dead bodies and not the living ones that he had met. So it's like he finally broke down and you know, he saw what a monster he was, and then they ripped him apart. And when they rip him apart, they tear out his face, and underneath we see a mannequin face. And I think that the symbolism of the mannequins within this for him is that they have a human shape. Like, they look like humans, but they're soulless. They're hollow. They're empty. They appear like a human. They have a human form, but there's nothing there. And when we get that reveal that he's a mannequin under himself, that's how he views himself. That's why he's you know, drawn to the mannequins, is that he feels like he's like them. Like he's void of any emotions, that he has no heart, that he has nothing in him. And Anna gives him this hope that he has something in him. And when he realizes what a monster he is, by all the acts of murder that he had committed, they tear him apart and show him what he truly is: hollow and soulless. So yeah, I think that's it. But whew, what a fucking-tastic movie. Jesus, man, this movie is brutal and shies away from nothing, and I love it so much. So this has a reversible cover here, which is pretty cool, but I prefer the mannequin one, but Elijah Wood in there with the knife. I don't know. Anyway, I have this. Anyway, all right, I'm stalling. I look forward to Slasher Sunday every week, so when it's over, it's kind of like, another week. But anyway, guys, all right, Monster Monday tomorrow. Until then.